The room was silent, so silent that even the hum of the fluorescent lights felt loud. Every eye in the courtroom turned toward the boy sitting at the defense table. 17 years old, sneakers tapping against the marble floor, a smirk painted carelessly across his face. The bailiff's glare didn't shake him. The whispers from the gallery didn't faze him. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, eyes half-lidded, like someone who believed nothing in this room could touch him. And then it happened. The judge spoke, voice low but sharp. "Mr. Lawson, do you understand the charges against you?" The boy laughed, not a nervous chuckle, an open, defiant laugh that echoed through the courtroom like glass breaking. Gasps followed. His mother covered her face. The prosecutor froze mid-sentence. Even the stenographer hesitated, her fingers hovering above the keys. For a moment, no one moved. Then the judge lifted his eyes, calm, piercing, impossible to read. "I see. You think this is funny." The boy shrugged. "Kinda." The silence that followed could crush a soul. Friends, have you ever seen a moment where pride walks straight into its own storm? Where a single laugh becomes the rope that tightens around your future? That's what this moment was. Jake Lawson thought the courtroom was a stage and he was the comedian. But in that single heartbeat, when the laughter died and the judge's stare didn't, something shifted. The air grew heavy. Every person in that room knew this wouldn't end like the other times. And yet, he didn't stop smirking. He thought the system couldn't touch him, that it was just another grown-up lecture. But what he didn't know was that this judge, Judge Raymond Carter, wasn't like the others. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't threaten. He simply said, "Mr. Lawson, I'll make sure you remember this day for the rest of your life." The boy's grin faltered, but only slightly. What could a judge possibly say that would silence a kid who laughed in his face? You'll find out soon enough. But remember this, sometimes the moment you stop taking life seriously is the moment life decides to teach you the hardest lesson of all. Jake Lawson had become a familiar name in the small town of Brookdale, not because he did anything remarkable, but because he was always in trouble. 17 years old, sharp tongue, quicker fists, and a smile that never seemed to care. Teachers sighed when they saw his name on attendance sheets. Store owners shook their heads when they saw him on the street. To them, Jake was just another lost kid, angry, unpredictable, and destined to crash into something harder than himself. That morning, he walked into the courtroom like it was a joke. Baggy hoodie, sneakers squeaking against the floor, that same lazy grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Behind him, his mother. Weary eyes, trembling hands, tried not to cry. She had done this walk too many times before. Sitting in the same hard benches, hearing the same disappointed voices, but this time it felt different. The air felt heavier. Even she could sense something coming. Judge Raymond Carter had been on the bench for over 25 years, known for his calm demeanor, for listening before speaking, for believing that justice should heal before it punishes. He'd seen every kind of defendant, thieves, addicts, the broken, the desperate. But Jake was something else. There was no fear in his eyes, no remorse in his voice, just a strange kind of emptiness hiding behind arrogance. Jake Lawson, the judge read out loud, charged with vandalism, trespassing, and property destruction. Previous arrests include disorderly conduct and assault. You've made quite a record for yourself, haven't you? Jake tilted his head, smiling. Guess so. A few chuckles rippled from the back of the courtroom. They weren't laughing with him. They were laughing at him, the town's troublemaker putting on another show. But Judge Carter didn't laugh. He just studied the boy in silence. What made a 17-year-old so numb to consequence? What hollowed out that sense of fear every child once had? The answers weren't written in the police report. They lived in the quiet corners of Jake's home. A one-bedroom apartment where the walls remembered too many arguments. His father had walked out when he was 9, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and half-packed boxes. His mother, Claire, worked double shifts at a diner, coming home with aching feet and forced smiles. They rarely talked anymore. Every word seemed to spark a fight, and every fight ended the same way, with Jake storming out, slamming doors, pretending he didn't care. At school, he was the kind of kid teachers gave up on early. Smart but lazy, talented but undisciplined. Jake wore their disappointment as armor. He found friends who laughed at his jokes, followed his lead, and helped him forget the loneliness gnawing at his chest. Nights turned into chaos, graffiti, stolen beer, rooftop dares, and when the police came, Jake was always the one smiling in the photos. To him, fear was weakness, regret was a trick, and adults were hypocrites. So when he stood before Judge Carter, he didn't see authority. He saw another man pretending to care. "Mr. Lawson," the judge said evenly, "what do you think this court is for?" Jake shrugged. "To scare people like me, I guess." The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. "And is it working?" Jake smiled wider. "Not really." His mother whispered, "Jake, please." But he didn't look back. He couldn't. Because if he did, he'd see her tears. And tears meant guilt, something he refused to feel. The courtroom murmured quietly. One officer shook his head. The prosecutor muttered under his breath, "Hopeless." But Judge Carter didn't see hopelessness. He saw pain wearing a mask. He had seen it before, in soldiers who came back from war, in addicts fighting ghosts only they could see. Jake's rebellion wasn't power, it was protection, and if no one reached him soon, that mask would harden into something permanent. As the gavel tapped softly, the judge leaned back, studying the boy one last time. "Jake Lawson, you think fear makes you weak, but someday you'll learn that the only thing stronger than fear is understanding it." Jake rolled his eyes, pretending not to listen. But somewhere, deep inside, a crack had formed, and through that crack a little bit of light was starting to slip in. The courtroom clock ticked like a heartbeat, steady, slow, unforgiving. The trial had barely begun, and already the tension was thick enough to choke on. The prosecutor cleared his throat and began to read the charges aloud. "Your Honor, the defendant, Jake Lawson, is being charged with multiple counts of vandalism, destruction of public property, and trespassing on restricted construction grounds. Damages estimated at over $25,000. This is not his first offense." Jake stretched his arms over his head, yawning loudly. "You forgot bad attitude," he muttered. The gallery chuckled nervously. Judge Carter lifted his gaze slowly. "Mr. Lawson, this is a courtroom, not a comedy club. If you can't control yourself, I will." Jake tilted his head, unbothered. "Sorry, Your Honor. Just trying to keep it entertaining." His mother's fingers dug into the wooden bench behind him. She wanted to scream stop, to grab her son and shake the arrogance out of him. But she stayed quiet. She had done that before. It never worked. The prosecutor continued. The defendant and his associates entered the Brookdale Recreation Complex after hours. They vandalized property, spray-painted obscenities on the walls, and destroyed a newly installed support beam, causing a partial collapse of the structure. 2 security guards were injured trying to stop them. Jake snorted. "Those guys were fine. It wasn't even that bad." The judge's gavel struck once. "Enough," Carter said firmly. "You will remain silent until spoken to." But Jake didn't believe him. He'd been in court before. Traffic tickets, minor fights, curfew violations. Every time someone bailed him out, some social worker gave a lecture, and he walked free. The system had become his stage. The judge, just another audience member. When the first witness, a maintenance supervisor, described finding the mess the next morning, Jake whispered under his breath, "He should thank us. Gave the place some personality." The bailiff shot him a warning glare. The judge raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Not yet. Then came the police officer who arrested him. "Your Honor, when we arrived, the defendant was filming the scene on his phone, laughing. He showed no remorse and made jokes while we were handcuffing him. The judge turned toward Jake. Is that true? Jake shrugged. I guess I have a sense of humor. The judge leaned forward slightly. A sense of humor can be a gift, Mr. Lawson, unless it's used to hide from yourself. Jake frowned for a second, the first crack in his facade, but quickly masked it with another smirk. I'm good, thanks. The prosecutor pressed on. This is not a misunderstanding or a prank gone too far, Your Honor. This was intentional destruction. The defendant knew the risks, ignored warnings, and continues to show no respect for the law, the victims, or this court. Jake's mother buried her face in her hands. Respect, Jake muttered. That's funny. Grown-ups break rules all the time. Nobody locks them up. The judge's gaze sharp.
Jake felt his stomach drop. He wanted to deny it, but couldn't. I didn't, he started, voice breaking. I didn't mean for it to happen. Emily's eyes lifted again, wet but steady. Neither did he. Jake stumbled backward, the mop slipping from his hands. That night he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, calm, broken, knowing. For the first time in years, Jake Lawson wasn't laughing. And for the first time in his life, he was afraid. The first week passed in silence. Jake mopped floors, emptied trash bins, and stacked medical supplies, doing everything he could to avoid eye contact. The laughter that once filled every room he entered was gone. Not because he'd grown up, but because he didn't know how to laugh here. The trauma center was a world of quiet suffering, a place where people measured progress in inches, not miles. Every day he saw Emily in her wheelchair by the window, sketching. She never looked at him again after that first confrontation. Still, he found himself glancing at her reflection in the glass. He wanted to say something, but the words stayed locked inside his throat. On the 15th day, while wiping down a table in Emily's room, he muttered, "You really don't talk much, huh?" She didn't respond. He sighed, "You probably hate me." Her pencil stopped mid-stroke. "You think this place is boring?" she asked quietly. "What?" "Try living here forever." Her tone wasn't cruel, but it pierced him all the same. He looked at her for a long time. "I didn't mean for that to happen." Her eyes didn't soften. "Neither did my brother." He broke inside. That night, he replayed that night in his head. The laughter, the camera, the scream, the silence. Now he knew whose scream it was. The next morning, Jake began to change. He started working harder, staying late, helping with therapy sessions. Slowly, Emily stopped ignoring him. One day she showed him a drawing, her brother, smiling. He used to say laughter could fix anything. Now I can't stand the sound of it. Jake's voice cracked. You shouldn't have to feel that way. Then maybe stop being the reason people do. Her words destroyed what was left of his pride. Weeks later, he sat in front of her, trembling. "Emily, I was there. I laughed. I filmed it. And when it went wrong, I ran. I told myself it wasn't my fault, but it was." Tears filled his eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen." She whispered, "Neither did he." He broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. That was the moment the boy who mocked justice finally understood it. 30 days later, Jake Lawson stood again before Judge Carter. The smirk was gone. His voice trembled. "I used to think this place was a joke," he said softly, "but now, I think this is the only place that ever told me the truth." Judge Carter nodded slowly. "Then take that truth and do something with it. Use your voice for something that matters." Months later, Jake spoke to schools about choices, about empathy, about the cost of carelessness. Justice isn't about punishment, he told a crowd of teenagers. It's about change. In the back of the auditorium, Judge Carter watched silently, a faint smile touching his face. The boy who once laughed in court had become its messenger. The final scene fades on Jake shaking the judge's hand, his mother crying quietly, and Emily smiling faintly from her wheelchair. The narrator's voice returns, calm and reflective. Friends, if this story touched your heart, share it. Because somewhere out there, another teen is about to make the same mistake, and maybe your share could stop them. The camera lingers on the empty courtroom bathed in soft light. The gavel rests quietly, no longer a weapon, but a symbol of hope. And as the screen fades to black, the judge's words echo one last time. Justice isn't about punishment, it's about change. Then the narrator adds, almost like a whisper, in our next story, a young mother faces the same judge, but her secret could destroy everything. The faint hum of the courtroom fades as the music swells, carrying a mix of sorrow and light. The camera slowly zooms out, showing the hallways of the courthouse, empty now, but filled with echoes of all the lives that passed through it. A janitor closes the heavy wooden doors, and sunlight spills through the high windows, casting long, golden lines across the floor. The narrator's voice continues, steady and reflective. Every courtroom holds two kinds of stories, one about guilt and one about growth. Most people only hear the first, but sometimes, if you listen closely, you'll hear the second. The quiet story of someone who finally learns what it means to care. Cut to Jake outside, standing on the courthouse steps. He looks up at the sky, the same sky he once ignored. His mother stands beside him, smiling faintly through tears. "You did it, Jake," she says softly. He nods. "No, Mom, we did." Down the street, the trauma center comes into view. Emily sits by the window, sketching again. This time her drawing isn't of her brother or the past. It's of a boy standing on courthouse steps, looking toward the sunrise. A nurse walks by and pauses to look at the sketch. "That's a good one," she says. Emily smiles, a small spark of peace finally touching her eyes. It's a true story. The frame shifts to Judge Carter in his office, staring at the photo on his desk, a simple picture of him shaking Jake's hand. The words carved in the frame read, "Change begins with compassion." He closes the case file marked Lawson, Jake, and places it on a growing stack labeled Rehabilitated. Then he leans back, whispering to himself, "One down, many more to go." The narrator's tone grows hopeful. Maybe justice isn't a hammer at all. Maybe it's a mirror, one that shows us not what we've done wrong, but what we still have time to make right. Soft piano music rises. Jake walks through a high school gymnasium where a banner hangs above the bleachers. Second Chances Assembly. Students laugh, whisper, and roll their eyes until he starts to speak. "I used to think rules were made to break," he says into the microphone. "But the truth is, rules are made to protect what we're too young to value until it's gone." The audience quiets. He tells them about Emily, about the night he almost destroyed 2 lives, and how one sentence changed everything. The shot lingers on his face, older now, calmer. When he finishes, the students stand and clap, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. In the back row, a young boy with tired eyes watches him with the same defiance Jake once had. But this time, something in that boy's expression softens. Cut back to the narrator's voice. Sometimes redemption isn't about who you were, it's about who you decide to become, and who you help next. As the screen begins to fade, Jake walks off the stage. Outside, the wind blows across the schoolyard, carrying laughter, not mocking, but warm, alive, healed. The final words appear on the screen in white letters against a black background. Justice isn't about punishment, it's about change. A pause, then, softly, a new line fades in. Next on Trial and Truth, the mother's secret. A single lie, a desperate choice. One verdict that will test everything. The music fades to silence, and for a moment the world holds its breath. waiting for the next story of redemption to begin. The sound of a clock ticking fills the silence. A new dawn washes across the courthouse exterior, the same building, but a new story, about to unfold. The camera pans slowly up the steps, where a woman stands alone, holding the hand of a small child. Her eyes are swollen from crying, her hair pulled back hastily. She stares at the heavy doors before her, gathering courage. The narrator's voice returns, low and steady. She's not a criminal. She's a mother. But today she stands accused. Not of what she did, but of what she's been hiding. The little girl tugs at her sleeve. "Mommy, is the nice judge inside?" The woman forces a trembling smile. "Yes, sweetheart. He's inside." She takes a deep breath, steps forward, and pushes open the courtroom doors. The echoes of her heels blend with whispers of curiosity from the crowd. Already gathered, Judge Carter looks up, recognizing her name on the file in front of him. Daniels, Rebecca. His expression shifts, not surprise, but concern. He's seen her before. Years ago she stood as a witness in another case, calm, composed, respected. Now she stands accused of something that could take away the only thing she loves. The narrator continues, "In our next story, the courtroom of second chances opens its doors once again, but this time, mercy may not be enough." Cut to a close-up of the judge's gavel, motionless. Then the woman's face, determined but terrified. Her secret sits just beneath the surface, ready to tear everything apart. The judge leans forward. "Mrs.